and thank you for the opportunity to present QwikTag and our solution to everybody that is that's joined us for the webinar today. Today's topic is called "There's a QwikApp for That," and I don't think that it's any secret to anybody that QwikTag has been a longtime player in the dynamic space with integrations into both GP, Nav, AX, and Solomon. But what a lot of people don't know is that QwikTag is a very flexible platform that can be leveraged not only integrated into Dynamics, but also used as a document management platform outside of Dynamics. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of quick slides before we jump into the demo and start demonstrating a handful of different QwikApps that can be purchased and or added on top of the QwikTag platform to automate different document types and the business processes behind those document types. So again, just a little bit of background on our organization. We were founded in 1997, so we've been doing document management for a long time. We have over 1,000 customers in 12 countries, and we're on every continent now except for Antarctica. And we've been awarded 8 U.S. patents. And those patents, one of them is the way that we embed into Dynamics, but the other 7 patents revolve around our capture methods. And when I say capture methods, I'm referring to the ways that we have to get data and documents into the QwikTag repository and potentially associated to transactional data. We were the first company to ever embed into Dynamics as a capture solution back in 2004, again going back to one of our very first patents. We've got 300,000 plus users worldwide now, and very proud of the fact that we've got a greater than 94% support renewal rate, which is well above the industry standard. Our vision as a company is to provide a system for everything document related, okay, which is kind of perfect with our theme for today of there's a QwikApp for that. We're providing a system for everything document related, regardless of department, regardless of document, and regardless of touch point. So on the right-hand side of this screen, you'll notice that I've got a little stack here, almost like kind of an architecture stack of our solution. And at the base of it, we've got the QwikTag platform. The QwikTag platform allows users to be able to capture images either standalone outside of their transactional system or their dynamic system, or to their dynamic system directly to the screens and the forms within GP or AX, whichever you're using. And then QwikApps, just above that, are applications that can be added on top of the platform that consist of 3 main functionalities. We've got electronic workflow and routing. We've got document associations so that we can see documents that are associated to other documents and build case views around particular people or processes in the organization. And any time that we've got workflow and routing and there are approvals that are happening, we also want to have visibility and transparency into the process and make sure that things aren't sitting on people's desks for particular periods of time and getting stale and not being worked. And so reporting is a big aspect of QwikApps as well. And again, I'll just reiterate that although many of you are familiar with us being embedded into the GP or AX as a capture solution, this is a software that can be leveraged enterprise-wide. It's very scalable, and any department can use it regardless of whether you're using it embedded into another system or not. And now the 4 main components of QwikTag and QwikApps are A, the document capture aspect of it, simple, powerful capture, both embedded into Dynamics and web-based. B, electronic workflow and routing, and that's the electronic approvals that are going to happen, knowing that every document in your organization actually has a process behind it. C, case management, the ability to wrap documents around each other and related to each other based on unique identifiers like a PO number, where you have an invoice and a packing slip and a purchase order that are all related to each other. Or maybe think about all of the documents that come into the organization throughout the life cycle of an employee, right? You might have 50 documents that range from offer letter to application to PTO request to personnel action form or pay change, right? And all of those documents today are probably sitting in filing cabinets, and they're in different drawers. And then if you want to make an employee file, you have to take a copy of all of those documents, and then that goes into its own filing cabinet as well. So we've got the ability, leveraging document associations, to build a 360-degree view of all of the documents that are related to a particular person or process, right, regardless of where they actually reside or in what digital drawer, if you will, they reside in the organization and inside of QuickTag. And then the last component, D, would be forms automation. And think of this as like e-forms. The ability to take different types of templates, whether they be Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, or various Microsoft Office products, and be able to actually upload those into the system to be leveraged as templates that can then be manually affected or typed into and then submitted and routed through an approval process. So those are the four main components, and those are all of the slides that I'll walk you through today, and we'll go ahead and we'll jump right into the demo and start taking a look at QuickApps. Real quick, before we take a look at QuickApps, I want to walk through some of the capture methods that we have and the ways that we have to get documents and data into the system. And I want to get you just a little bit familiar with QuickTag. And let me just switch over to my desktop for just a second. There we go. So this is QuickTag at first glance after you log into the system, and this is the user experience outside of the dynamic solution. It's being provided by an internet browser. Whether you choose to use Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or Mozilla or Safari is up to you. We're internet browser agnostic, but you would log in. And we can also leverage single sign-on and Active Directory integration, so that way you don't have to have 10 different passwords floating around. You can use the same one that you're used to for Outlook and for your Active Directory. But the first thing that I want to do, again, is just kind of familiarize you with the layout of QuickTag. So if you notice in the upper left-hand corner here where I have my mouse, I've highlighted drawers. So this is basically the QuickTag repository, and this is how the documents are going to be structured inside of the repository. QuickTag is set up by sites, so you might have multiple sites. For instance, I have a Fabricam site. Well, anybody that uses Great Plains knows that this is GP test data. So this is my GP site, and I've got a handful of drawers, in fact about 73 of them in here, that are all mapped to GP screens. So if I do use this integrated into Great Plains, when I'm on the GP side and I tag a document directly to a payables transaction entry or a fixed asset, the document is going to end up going into a payables transaction entry drawer or a fixed asset drawer. I also have a human resources site and a QuickTag site. And again, you'll notice that all of these sites have their own set of drawers. So my QuickTag site would be a standalone site that's not related to the GP or the AX system, right? And these are just custom drawers that I have built. And inside of these custom drawers, I have established the index fields for the various data that I want to index for these particular document types, and the security and the permissions. So that way, I can basically lock the drawer to people in the organization that I don't want to be able to see that particular data. If I click on a drawer, you'll notice that it exposes all of the contents of that drawer to me. And in this middle portion of the screen, I have the ability to scroll across and see all of the data that's related to the particular documents. And I can see what type of document it is, who tagged the document, the name of that user, the actual pages versus an expected page count, when it was scanned or when it was uploaded. Right? And then on the right hand of the screen, I have this native viewer where I have the ability to see the document regardless of what version, what type of document it is. It will be in this right side of the screen in its native form. And this native viewer is expandable, so depending on whether I want to see more image or whether I want to see more data, I can make it bigger or I can make it smaller. Okay, now, anytime that we're going to get the document into the system and route it through an approval process, we want to get the documents into the work queue. So this is the second tab that I'm going to hit here. And you'll notice that if you look at Internet Explorer at the top here, I've got a lot of tabs open. And the reason is that I'm going to show a couple of different types of workflow. And I've created in my demo environment a handful of different types of users that are going to operate at different touch points throughout the different workflow processes. So I've got about 6 or 7 tabs open here. But regardless of the workflow that I'm going to perform, I always want to get the document into the work queue so that it can be indexed and so that it can be routed. So keeping in mind the theme of today's webinar, there's a KwikApp for that. I'm going to show you a handful of different KwikApps that we've created for different document types and the business processes that are behind those document types. So we have a number of KwikApps. We've got one for payables, for AP invoice routing and approval. We've got expense report routing and approval and the ability to take images of your receipts from a smartphone or tablet and email those into the system and compile those into an expense report. We've got the ability to use this for PTO requests, contract approval, resumes that we want to route through an applicant tracking process. So, you know, even though we have this handful of about 10 or so different KwikApps that we've pre-created that are, you know, deliverable KwikApps, we also have the ability to take any document type and any business process and create a KwikApp for it. So what I'd like to use today's webinar for is obviously to show you some of the KwikApps that we've created that are already kind of out-of-the-box KwikApps, if you will. And keep in mind that they're configurable to be very specific to your business process. But I also want to use this time today for you as you see the workflows and you see the different KwikApps to start brainstorming and to start thinking about the low-hanging fruit in your organization where you've got a document, it needs to be routed through an approval process, and you find yourself often having bottlenecks and low visibility and not being able to see where the documents are or whose desk they're on and getting caught up in that process and causing a paper burden along the way too, because I know we all want to get rid of the filing cabinets and, you know, these documents generally get copied along the way and, you know, that costs a lot of money from a number of different aspects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off. I've already got a couple of documents that I've loaded into my my work queue for the demo purposes today. And you'll notice I'm logged in this upper right-hand corner. It welcomes me as an indexer. And of course, once this software is out in the wild and it's, you know, actually in your environment and on-premise, you know, these are not going to be generic names like indexer and approver and department manager. These are going to be the names of the users in your particular organization. So I'm going to start off by routing an invoice, and the idea is that I've got about 5 or 6 documents that I'm going to route, and they're all going to end up in the CFO's work queue because many of these types of documents require you know, approval from a C-level executive in my organization. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a document that's sitting here in my work queue, and I need to tell QuickTag what type of document it is. And when I tell it what type of document it is, it will then give me the rest of the information that needs to be indexed, right, in order to route that document through the appropriate approval matrix and the approval hierarchy. So I'm going to choose invoices, pre-GL, and then I'm going to select my company ID, which is Fabricam, because this is a GP-related document in this case, so I need to choose my correct GP company. I need to give it a date. So I'm just going to give it today's date, even though that doesn't match the date that's on the image itself, just to kind of keep this simple and moving forward. And then I can actually come over here to the image and highlight the invoice number and hit Control-C for my copy function, and then bring it right over here to the document number and hit Control-V and paste it. I'll then give it the purchase amount, and then I can go ahead and click on this little magnifying glass here, and this is actually going to do a lookup into the vendor cards that I have set up in my GP system or in my AX system if you're an AX user, and I can then filter based on all of the vendors that I have set up in that dynamic system. So I'm going to go ahead and filter for advanced office systems. I've just typed a couple of letters. I'm going to double click it, and then I'm going to leave a comment that said, needs to be coded and approved. I'm going to click Submit, and so now that document is being routed through an approval matrix that's been provided to the system, so that it basically takes all of that data that we just indexed it, and then it cross-references that with the business rules that we've written into the software. So for instance, you may have a very simple one-tier approval process where regardless of the price of the invoice or the cost of the invoice, it only goes to a department manager. Or you might have up to 4 tiers of approval that are based on different dollar tier thresholds, right? If it's over $10,000, it goes to a second tier. If it's over $30,000, it needs to go to a C-level executive for a third tier approval as well. So again, our software is flexible, and we're going to take all of those processes that are specific to your organization, and we're going to make sure to configure the software accordingly so that we replicate that current process. Now, notice in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, I actually have an email notification that has popped up here, and that's an email notification that went to the department manager in the organization, letting the department manager know that there's an invoice that's sitting in their work queue that's waiting for some sort of action. If I click on that, you can see that all of the data that was indexed, right, has shown up in the body of the email. We also have an attachment. If I double-click on that, you'll notice that that's the copy of the document in a PDF version. And then they also have the ability to approve or reject it directly from this email notification. So they don't necessarily need to go into QuickTag in order to do an approval. They could actually do it here, but because we actually have to do some GL coding for this particular invoice, I am going to go into the system, and now I've clicked into my second Internet Explorer tab. So I'm no longer the indexer. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner I'm logged in as the department manager. If I right-click and refresh my screen, then you'll notice the invoice that was just routed from the indexer has appeared in the work queue. I've got that same nice clean visual of it on the right-hand side that I can expand and contract if I'd like to. And on the left-hand side, I can see all of the data that has been indexed so far by the indexer. Now, we do have a higher level of automation available for those organizations that are tired of the data entry. They're tired of the errors that are produced as a result of manual data entry. And it's a technology that we have called Zonal Ocr. So if I go back real quick to the indexer work queue, and rather than choose an electronic document, if I choose one of these documents that's titled ICE, you'll notice that this document has been automatically indexed, and the indexer doesn't have to key in any data. So this is a document that was scanned with Zonal Ocr. The system was set up so that it's intelligent enough to recognize the document type, and when it recognizes the document type, it knows where to grab the date, it knows where to grab the invoice number, it grabs the vendor name and finds the associated vendor ID and the purchase amount and all of that data that we're so used to actually keying in manually. So I did just want to point out that we do have that higher level of automation if you do want to get rid of the data entry and you'd rather the system to do that heavy lifting for you. For today's demo purposes, I'm going to continue to actually index the data for the various document types. So back over to the department manager. Now that this document has shown up in the department manager's work queue, I just need to provide the GL codes for it. So I'm going to click on this little magnifying glass here. And the first thing that you're going to notice are default GL distributions. And these are being pulled over from Great Plains from the chart of accounts and from the vendor defaults that are set up in the vendor card. If you don't want to use the vendor defaults, you can always delete them out, or you can add more GL distributions to this, either manually by clicking on Add Blank or by clicking View All. We provide you with a lookup into that chart of accounts so that you can come in and add an additional distribution such as computer equipment, and then you can change your functioning totals or change your debit and credits amount so that the functioning totals at the bottom match up. And if they don't match up and you try to submit this, it's going to error out. It's not going to let you leave this screen. But I'll go ahead and submit, and then I'll leave a comment that says coding is done. needs your approval. Okay, now when I hit submit, the way that my demo environment is set up is that that's going to now route to the CFO for the final approval. Okay, so we're going to come back to the CFO's work queue at the very end of the demo, and in the meantime, I'm going to shift. I'm going to kind of shift over, and I'm going to start to show you some of the different types of KwikApps that we have, and then at the end we'll come back and we'll look at all of the documents in the CFO's work queue. So that's the KwikApp that we have for that is called Quick Payables, and that's for invoice routing and approval. And now I'm going to come over to my administrator, and I'm going to go into my drawer structure, and I'm going to upload a applicant. This is going to be a resume that I'm going to upload into the system. And let's see here, choose my folder, and then I'm just going to right-click, and I'm going to say Tag. Okay, now this is going to give me the ability to tag in a couple of different ways. If this is a paper document, a paper resume that I'm actually going to physically scan, then you'll notice that there's a tag number here, and that tag number actually matches a barcode number that I have in a little dispenser on my screen. I'm going to bring up a camera really quickly, and I'm going to show you what these dispensers look like. So this is called a tag Band Dispenser, and it has a paper reel of 500 barcode labels, and they're little sticky labels, and they each have unique 9-digit numbers. They're registered to the individual users, so that's the first part of our audit trail, and they also act as page separators. So if I have a 6-page resume, I don't need to put a barcode sticker on every single page. I only need to put it on the first page of the document. I can create my reservation by clicking Submit, barcode the document, put it in my outbox, and move on to the next one and repeat the process. At the end of the day, I go through the 50 resumes or the 50 documents that I've created these reservations for and barcoded, and I put them into the scanner, and they will all end up in the QuickTag work queue for me to go ahead and work. Now, if I already have an electronic document, I don't want you to have to print the piece of paper and waste the paper, and I don't want you to have to waste a barcode. So we have the ability to click Upload or drag and drop the document into the drawer as well. So instead of scanning a piece of paper and wasting a barcode, I'm going to click Upload, and I'm going to grab a PDF copy of a resume that I have on my desktop. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and submit that, and that document is going to end up in the indexer's work queue in just a minute. Now, I also mentioned the ability to drag and drop. So if I were to open up an email, or if I were to open up my desktop or my network drives or any area that I have access to, I can also just grab a document and click it and then drag it over to the electronic documents drawer, and that performs the same function as the upload does for me to grab a document that's already been digitized. So again, I can do that from my desktop, I can do it from my computer, or I can do it from Outlook. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the indexer, and I'm going to refresh my work queue. And notice here's today's date for this particular document type. If I click on it, this is the copy of Angela Barbarial's resume. So this is a QuikApp that we have called QwikHR, and it's for applicant tracking. And this is going to allow me to route an applicant through an approval process all the way through the interview phase, and then even to job offer creation if the applicant makes the grade. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select resume as my document type, and this time you'll notice a very different set of index fields, right? We don't need an invoice number, and we don't need a purchase amount. We need data that's going to be related to the resume. And again, if you wanted that higher level of automation, that Zonal Ocr, we do have the ability to configure the system to be able to recognize resumes and grab the information off of the document and index it for you so that you don't have to necessarily key in this data. So I'm going to type in Angela's first name, her last name, her email address, which is just someone@example.com, since this is just a sample resume. We'll say that we received it today and that she's applying for this particular position that's open in the company. And then I'll leave some comments here that says, please review resume and pass along to hiring manager if she fits the bill. And then I click submit. And again, that document is going to route to the appropriate hiring manager for that particular position that is open. Okay, and we're still going to get these notifications that are going to show up along the way. So in the bottom right-hand corner in a second, you should see another email notification hit. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to move over into the HR Managers tab. So notice I'm now in a third Internet Explorer tab, and I'm not the indexer or the department manager this time, but I'm the HR Manager. In my demo environment, the HR Manager is going to give an initial cursory glance at the resume, and then they're either going to approve it or reject it. By the way, there's my email notification. And again, we've got the index data, and then we've got the actual resume attached to that notification. But the HR Manager is going to give a cursory glance and make sure that they kind of fit the bill from a high-level perspective, and then they're going to either reject the document, delegate it, or approve it and move it on to the hiring manager. So I'm going to refresh my HR Manager's work queue in order to have that resume show up there. And so there it is. And I've given a quick look of it. Looks like it fits the bill from a high level. And so I'll leave some more comments here that says, looks good at first glance. See what you think. And then I'm going to click approve. Now that resume is going to go from the HR Manager's work queue, and it's now going to go into the hiring manager's work queue. I've already got a couple in here. Here's the one that we actually, here's the one that we just routed. So notice again I've got, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm not in my work queue. There we go. Okay, so here's the document that was routed from Human Resources. And now I need to decide what I want to do with this as the hiring manager. Do I want to actually move this forward in the process, or do I want to reject it and have it go into the repository so that we can work on it on a later date when we have another position in the company that might be a better fit for it? So I need to update the resume status as either disqualified, unqualified, selected for an interview, or whatever you determine you want these index fields to be for your particular instance of QuickTag. And I'm going to say select for an interview, and then it's going to give me the ability to select interviewers. I have groups set up here, or I also have individual users. We'll go ahead and select Darren Wood, and we'll go ahead and select the expense managers group, and then I'll go ahead and submit it. And what happens now is this actually sends a notification to Human Resources letting them know that we want to schedule an interview for this particular candidate. It also sends an email notification to the interviewers letting them know that they're going to be scheduled and that they're also going to be required to fill out a form where they provide interview comments and interview feedback. All of these documents are going to get submitted to QuickTag throughout the course of the interview process, and they're going to end up making a case. Okay, so if I go into cases inside of QuickTag and choose Applicant Tracking, notice I can come to Angela Barbarial and I can see the master document, which is her resume, and I can at first glance see all of the header data that's associated to her resume, and I can right-click and view the document and see the workflow history. I can also see the particular employee requisition that this was for, and any job postings that are related to it. After the interview process, there will be more documents in here, and I'll also be able to see the interview notes, and if we decide to offer her a job, the offer letter will also compile into this case view. So this is a great example of what I mentioned when we were going through those slides and talking about cases and document associations, where we have the ability to create a case around different documents that are related to each other. In this case, they would be related based on an applicant ID number, or if we're talking about, again, an invoice, a packing slip, and a PO, they would be related to each other based on probably a purchase order number. So there's just a little example of what cases look like inside of the QuickTag system. But now that I have moved that on, we're going to pretend, just to kind of speed through the demo, that the interview went well, everybody submitted their notes, and the hiring manager has now decided that he or she actually wants to hire this person. So if I go into my drawers and I choose offer letter, there it is, I can right-click and tag, and then I can just basically resubmit her resume. And this time, because we've already gone through the hiring process, when I submit her resume, what's going to happen is it's going to compile an offer letter, and that's going to get routed to the CFO for an approval. So we'll go ahead and put today's date for the date sent on the offer letter. The status is pending. The salary we'll put at 95 to 100 plus thousand, and there's her email address, and we don't need to give it an expected page count necessarily if we don't want to. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click submit. So again, that's going to route to the CFO for approval, and let's move on to our next KwikApp and our next document type. So if I log in now into this other tab that I have open, I'm on my 5th or 6th tab now, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner that I'm actually logged in as a contract admin. So we've looked at Quick Payables, we've looked at KwikHR, both for the applicant tracking as well as the job offer approval, and now the KwikApp for contracts is going to be called, you can probably guess already, Quick Contracts. So I'm going to go into my drawers, and I'm going to select my contracts drawer, and then I'm going to right-click and say Tag, and I'm going to upload an electronic contract that I have that needs to get routed through an approval process. I'm going to go to my desktop in my sample documents folder, select my contracts folder, and here is one for Advanced Office Systems. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select Advanced Office Systems. I'm going to give it a contract number. We'll call it AOS and today's date. The contract amount is for $200,000. I'm just making this data up, of course. And then the receive date, we'll put today, and comments. Need your review so we can begin doing business with this company. And I'm going to click submit. Okay, so now we've uploaded a contract into the system, and we have routed that to the CFO for approval as well. Okay, the last workflow that I'm going to show you here that we're going to route to the CFO is a job requisition. And I'm going to approach this one from a different angle. Okay, this time I'm going to go into forms. And if you can remember back to the screens that I was walking through in the slideshow, I mentioned that there were 4 components of QuickTag. There's capture, there's workflow, there's cases, and there's forms. And forms is the last part that we haven't seen yet. So it's not always going to make sense for you to take an existing document and then get that into QuickTag and upload it or scan it or drag and drop it or email it into QuickTag or however you want to do that. There are going to be some cases where there's not actually going to be a document, okay, but you still want to route something through an approval process. And a PTO request is a great example, right? I want to request off a couple of days to go on vacation. Well, I don't have a document. I don't want to waste a piece of paper, and it doesn't make sense for you to print out a Word document and write onto it and waste that paper and a barcode label when you can actually leverage forms automation inside of QuickTag. So for any document in the organization that needs to be routed where there isn't something that's already kind of pre-existing, we've got the ability to upload a template into the system, and it's very simple. You can either upload a Word document like I have on the right-hand side, or you could upload an Excel spreadsheet or any other type of Microsoft Office product, and you can make it pretty with your company logo and manipulate it however you want, and we'll create a workflow on the back end for that particular document type so that your users can access that template and they can manually fill it in inside of QuickTag and then route it through an approval process. So this kind of goes back to the KwikHR type workflows where we've got an employee requisition workflow created in the system. So I'm going to index a little bit of data. This is for a job that I want to request of the CFO the approval to open so that I can fill this particular position. And again, even though we're talking about a job approval or an employee requisition, picture a PTO request or that low-hanging fruit in your organization where you've got a particular document type that has bottlenecks and you've got low visibility into the process. I'm going to go ahead and give this a job number, and we'll call it Engineering 101. And the title, I'll choose Engineer, and I'll give it the Engineering Department. And the proposed rate of pay, this is a mid-level position, so we'll give it about $75,000 to $80,000. I want to open this position formally on next Monday, and I'm going to tell the CFO that I'm going to close it if I haven't hired anybody in about 2 months. And then I can choose whether it's a full-time position or whether it's a temporary or whether it's going to be a contract to hire. And then I can come over here onto this form and I can actually manually add information on here too. So for the position summary, we'll say this engineer will be responsible for coding mission-critical business applications. I will require 5 to 7 years of experience. I'm not going to fill out this entire form. I think you can get the idea. We can put the, where it's being funded from or the major functions of the position or any data that is generally pertinent to the approvers in your organization that are going to approve a requisition like this. And then I can just go ahead and click Submit. And just like all of the other documents that we've routed through an approval process, this is going to go to my CFO for approval. Now, while we wait for that to hit the CFO's work queue, I want to go back to these email notifications that you keep notice are popping up in the right-hand corner of my screen. And I did mention earlier that all of the index data that's associated to them will be in the body of the email as well as the attachment, and you'll have the ability to approve or reject from them. But another function that these emails serve is they also act as a kind of an alarm clock, if you will, in order to help eliminate and identify the bottlenecks. So we're going to give pending approval reports. We're going to give approved reports and rejected reports and various reports so that you've got visibility into where documents are in the process. But you don't always want to have to rely on yourself to go view a report in order to make sure things are moving along. We want the system to be able to move them along for you. So we also are going to create an escalation service that's going to run in the background of QuickTag. And you basically need to tell us how long a document should sit in somebody's work queue before a particular action happens, and then what you want that particular action to be. So if a resume sits in a hiring manager's work queue for 3 days, do we want it to automatically reject back to the human resource manager, right? And then they can move it off to a different hiring manager within that department. Or do we want it to bypass that hiring manager, and do we want it to move up to the director of that department? Or a third example would be, let's just nag them and hit them with an email reminder every single day until they finally work the thing after it's been sitting there for 3 days. So there's some different options there, but the point is that we're going to do everything we can to help you identify and eliminate bottlenecks. Now, I'm going to go back over to Internet Explorer, and this time I'm going to go into my CFO's work queue. You'll notice that my CFO has a lot of documents in their work queue because they're responsible for approving a lot of items in the organization. I've got contracts, I've got employee requisitions, offer letters, invoices, all of these types of documents that we just routed through these approval processes today. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the contracts. I'm going to filter specifically just in the contracts so that I can very quickly see, what has shown up here today. And I'm just going to right-click and refresh my screen too. And so there you can see is the contract for advanced office systems that was routed by that contract administrator. So I can view the contract, I can look at all of the data, I can always right-click and see the workflow history too, and I can see who's looked at this so far in the various touch points in the organization. Click out of that workflow history. And so then I can approve, reject, or delegate this. I'll go ahead and I'll reject this one and let them know that we've had a bad experience with this supplier in the past and will not work with them again. Okay, so this is going to actually route back to the contract admin. Okay, now I'm going to deselect contracts, and I'm going to select employee requisitions. And you'll notice that the last one here in my work queue is the employee requisition that we just submitted, and that was the forms automation that we leveraged, that template that we filled out. Okay, so that has been routed to the CFO for approval, and this time I'm going to say, absolutely, we need a new engineer, you got it. And I'm going to approve this. Okay, now I'm going to deselect employee requisitions, and I'm going to go to offer letters. And remember that the hiring manager wanted to hire Angela Barbarial, and so they actually routed an offer letter approval to the CFO. And again, I can see all of this data on the left-hand side. If I'd like, I can go to Angela Barbarial's case if I want to dig a little bit further, and I can filter into all of her resume, the requisition itself, or maybe any interview notes that had been compiled in here along the way in order to do a little bit more digging and make sure that this is something that I want to approve. But I'll go back over to my work queue, and this time we'll show the delegate feature. I'll go back to that offer letter, and oops, my CFO doesn't have a delegate feature. Never mind. There's an additional button here that we can place in the event that you might want to provide your approvers with the ability to delegate to another user. But we'll go ahead and we'll approve this and say, she looks great. We're looking forward to her starting. And I'm going to click approve. Okay, now the last document, which really was the first document that we routed through the approval process, is the invoice. So if I scroll down here to the bottom and open up my preview pane or my native viewer, again, I can see the invoice, all of that data on the left-hand side. I can right-click and I can double-check the GL distributions and just verify that this has been coded accurately by the department manager. And again, I can look at the workflow history and make sure that this has gone through the appropriate approval chain. So I've got all my time and date stamps, the name of the user, the action that took place, and any comments that were left along the way. This looks good. So this time I will go ahead and delegate this because, maybe I'm out of the office and I want the credit controller to actually work on this. So it'll leave my work queue, it'll go to that credit controller, and they'll get the same email notification that I got. So, really, we just walked through about 4 or 5 different KwikApps, ranging from invoices to offer letters to employee requisitions, contracts. And so, like we said at the beginning of the demo and the beginning of the presentation, there is a KwikApp for that. So if there is a document type that is causing too much paper burden in your organization, and that paper burden not only is a burden from a paper standpoint and ink toner standpoint and a filing cabinet standpoint, there's also a process behind that document type, and my bet is that that process generally has bottlenecks in it that are hard to identify. So, there is a KwikApp for any document in your organization that needs to be routed through an approval process. And just to show you an extra use case or two really quick, I'm going to get out of my demo environment, and I'm now actually logged in. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner of my screen, I'm logged in as M. Brenneman. This is my internal use of QuickTag at my organization, which is called ImageTag, and this is a vacation request template. And this is very simple. It's a very elementary example. But when I fill this out and fill out the data on the left-hand side and submit it, it goes to my manager for approval, and then after my manager approves it, it goes over to the office manager/HR manager, and it gets noted in our HRIS system. So there really are, tons of ways to use QuickTag. I also have my expense reports. So if you go into my work queue, you'll notice that I've got receipts that are in here. Okay, this was something this was an image that I took. This is a bad image example, but it's an image that I took of a receipt, and that looks a little bit better. I took this from an airplane, and I took it from my iPhone, and then I emailed it to a particular email address that's linked to my work queue, and then I routed it to my manager for approval, but I noticed that when I was indexing it, when I got back into the office from my trip, that I got my receipts confused, and this was actually a personal expense. So I left some comments over here on the left-hand side that says, please reject, this is not a company expense, and I scanned this in accidentally. So if I go to look at the workflow history here, you can see that I edited the receipt, and then I submitted it to my VP of Sales, John Michaels, and he rejected it. And now it's sitting here for edit again, which means I really need to just get it out of my work queue altogether because it doesn't need to be rerouted. And then I've got some in here that were also duplicates. And you can, again, see the image on the right and the workflow history and all of that data. So this is an example of our expense report solution, which at the end of the day actually flows through to Great Plains, and I'm reimbursed as a vendor set up in the GP system outside of payroll. So again, there's a KwikApp for that. Whatever it is that you're trying to automate, there's a way to do that with QuickTag. After you buy the platform, we can add QuikApps across that platform for any document type and for any business process. There's a lot that I haven't gotten to. We've got the ability to do search and filter and do global search across companies or just filter specifically into particular drawers. But again, this is a system that can be used inside of GP as a enterprise content management system for your transactional data, and it can also be used outside of GP or AX or whatever Dynamics version you're using. My hopes are that you can reach out to your IBIS rep, whether it be John Bird or Susan Guy or whomever your rep is, and let them know that there may have been interest in what you saw today and that there's a piece of low-hanging fruit in your organization that you'd like to automate, and we can set up a very personalized demo after we do a discovery call for your particular process. I really appreciate everybody's time today, and thank you for joining us.